So it's been a big year for Cambio in 2025. Looking forward to hearing, Chris, how you reflect on it for Startium. This is our seventh year now, and the biggest change for us is we've started to work more outside the social economy. So, of course, we work with social enterprises, social businesses, and partners like universities and foundations, etc. But we're increasingly working with commercial businesses on how they can create a more social and sustainable supply chain, workforce, but also invest in products and services um, within the business actually that have a more of a social slant. And that means that we're looking at a more of an international footfall as well in terms of the kind of clients and people that we work with, the partners that we partner with. So as part of some of the events, we'll talk about also working in partnership with organizations in some key regions around the world. So Southeast Asia has been our big um, change for the autumn of this year. We've got a new office opening in Singapore just last month, back in October. And we've got new offices and new locations opening in the US and the Middle East next year. So it's been a big year. It's been exciting. And I think our big lesson has been let's not save all those great ideas in the social economy. Let's take them out into the wider world where they really belong.
Super. What a year, huh?
Yeah, it's been a big one.
Seems to be
Listen,
something.
here we come.
Yes. Seems to be something about like moving from remote businesses into like physical presence because you said it yourself and you know it's the same with us Startium and I know a couple of other businesses too. So like we've been a fully remote business for 4.5 years, 5 years. And in the last few months we have moved into a new office in studio in North Belfast in Northern Ireland for our UK team. So and that seems to be becoming more common. Whereas, you know, it would just be last year where I'd be saying something like, you know, I get so efficient working from home, you know, because I've got my golden retriever beside me and I've got the kitchen there and I've got 10 steps to get to work. But yeah, this year seems to be a change. And I know I've noticed in our business, even just having made that decision, to expand in that way, we sort of took a leap to expand and now we're filling in behind. And it's actually, yeah, really interesting to see how that's going to go into 2026. Like yourself, a couple of key developments in 2025 for us. Not only getting out on the road and going to a lot of the events that we're going to talk about today, but also key to change in terms of our products and services. So we've moved, just as you're going to move from the social economy into working with corporates, we have moved from a huge focus of us being with university entrepreneurship and moving into regional ecosystems. And how do we take that learning that we have worked with universities over the last 4 to 5 years in terms of helping them cultivate university entrepreneurship ecosystems on campus? And how do we take that out beyond campus into the region, working with local governments and councils too? So it's been an evolution in 2025, and it sounds like we're exciting updates to come in the 2026 review, I guess, to see how they all go.
Absolutely, Christy. Don't get ahead of yourself, but I'm super excited and obviously congratulations on the new space. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Yeah, and last thing I'll quickly say is just lots of great people. I mean, we've got more people working for us now, and it's a really diverse bunch. It's really smart, really energized, and they really keep me on my toes. So I'm lucky to have them, and I'm sure you, yeah, having met your team, you feel the same. People kind of make this, I think.
Totally. Like we're spending hours as business owners, we're spending hours and hours working on these solutions to these problems that we care about. And obviously it makes a huge difference if with the people that are on that journey with you. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Super. Well, we jump
So
in then and look back to.
I think we should. I can't believe the years disappeared so quickly, but there were so many great highlights and events, and we picked out a few, I think, real doozies here, haven't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was actually really nice to have shared these with you unintentionally. I think the first half of the year we were both obviously booked onto these, and then it was great to find out then that we're both going to be going to here and both going to be going there. So I think it's nice then now to be able to look back at all four, hear your perspective, and share a little bit of reflection because not everybody gets to go to all of these different opportunities and all
That's right.
conferences and events. And we've made it a real point this year to making sure that when we do and we make that effort and make that at expense, that we're actually bringing stuff back for our clients, our partners. And this is just an extension of doing that. So over to me. I think I was going to take
You
the
keep the
first one.
microphone, Chris. Yeah.
So the first one that sort of came up in 2025 for us, so we were both out together, wasn't until May. So it was Startup Hire in May, and it was hosted at Loughborough London campus. Beautiful spot, very handy. And I guess I'll let you talk a little bit about Startup Hire. Was your first Startup Hire, was it?
I think it's my second startup
Second
hire.
startup hire, sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
So it is unique. It's a unique event in terms of the others that we're going to talk about, just in terms of structure and the audience, what happens there, how it's led. And I think that's something I really value about Startup Hire. We've been on Startup Hire from its first iteration, and I think it's a really nice point of the year to check in. May time, come the end of the academic year. You're sort of looking ahead to next year, but not just yet. You've still got the bruises and the insights maybe from the previous year coming to an end. So yeah, Startup Hire this year, great. A couple of the key things for me coming out of Startup Hire was focus on AI came up quite a bit. I guess not surprising. For those who've never been to Startup Hire, probably just to give you some context, the audience that would go to Startup Hire traditionally started off called as an unconference. So there's no set structure, there's no set agenda. On the night before the unconference starts, the team, facilitated by a wonderful team at Startup Hire, uh, basically crowdsource what people want to talk about for the next 2 days, and that forms the agenda. Really interesting way to do it, particularly in a university academic setting, for it not to be a nice structured agenda published months in advance, etc., etc. But a couple of things, and I'll pass over to you, Peter, is that really stood out for me when looking back at what those crowdsourced sessions were. Uh, Really popular one was supporting freelancers. So, as another opportunity route into self-employment into business. Another one was Entrepreneurship for Good, and there was a session on that. And a really interesting one called Should Our Jobs Exist? Which I think gives a nod to the space that Startup Hire provides to have those conversations, because that's very unlikely you're going to get that on a conference agenda. But because it's crowdsourced, because it's a space to have those honest conversations, I sat in a few of those, which I thought was very interesting. So what about yourself? What did you think of Startup Hire?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I mean, I hope my job will exist next year, otherwise this will be the end of it. A series of videos. But on a serious note, I get exactly what that means. It's like, how do we deliver the impact we say we will, so we're less necessary than we were before, which is the name of the game. One of my favorite events of the year, because it's an unconference, and I realize every time I talk about this, I'm adding another sort of layer of gratitude to it, really, because it really is a highlight. There aren't too many unconferences in the world, actually, in my experience. Most events are usually fairly traditionally formatted. So, as you rightly say, Chris, all those great topics arrive literally the night before the event starts. And I think there's some kind of edits and changes that happen really as the week goes too, in terms of who runs the sessions, etc. So, yeah, those are some of the big topics that you've already pointed out. I guess my kind of impactful highlight of work from our perspective in the world of sustainability is that there was a big theme, there's a big strand this year in sustainability and kind of equality, diversity, and inclusion, more so than even in previous years. And I think it drew the question, should there be a strand actually of activity within the event next year where sustainability is really drawn out? Not to preset the topics, but at least to say, look, we want to run a certain number of sessions on this topic next year. And I think that's something we're talking to the guys who are organizing it about, to see if we can wrangle something. And it actually links to another event that we were co-hosting with a network called Impact U, which is a network adjacent to universities that provides support for impactful entrepreneurship to a network of universities, mostly online. It's an online community, online training, webinars, etc. We saw a lot of value in engaging with entrepreneurs, funders, ecosystem builders, etc., capacity builders, who were looking to do more work in social impact and sustainability. So there's been a bit of a trend here, and we'll see if that continues in the other events we talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just for the audience, a Startup Hire would be uh, entrepreneurship managers, advisors, business advisors working in university and college entrepreneurship centers. So it's quite concentrated in terms of, at other events, you might get a mix of that with along with academic professionals, with professional services staff. Whereas this one, yeah, it's definitely carved out that niche for itself, and therefore that's how you can get into these deep topics, because it's going to be relevant for most of the people there. But yeah, wonderful. In terms of Startup Hire, I'm guessing with the time this goes out, yeah, we'll be optimistic. In a week or so, it'll be going out. They're still looking for their host for 2026. It usually happens in around May time. So we'll put a wee link underneath the notes in this, wherever you're watching this, so that if you're interested in hosting or know someone who is, it's a wonderful opportunity to bring an event like that to your city, to your university, And I know others who have hosted it, and it's worked wonders for them in terms of opportunity to recognize and showcase what they do. So I'll put a wee note to that. So that usually happens in May in each year, and keep an eye out for that. If you haven't been to Startup Hire, highly recommend it.
Definitely, definitely.
Super.
Chris, shall I take us on to the next event of the year?
Go for it.
Hot on the heels, really. So the next conference was in June, and this event does move around actually every year, so the dates do change. But on this occasion, it was straight after Startup Hire, and it's the GC, the Global Entrepreneurship Congress, run by the GEN, the Global Entrepreneurship Network, who also do the GW, which is the Global Entrepreneurship Week, which is probably what they're most famous for, and that happens every November, all around the world. So what makes this a special event is that it's global focus. It's about the entire ecosystem, as Chris said earlier. As with Startup Hire, you've got a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of ecosystem builders, funders, but also some policymakers, industry professionals. It's pretty broad. And although it's not an unconference, it's not purely a traditional conference either. There's quite a lot of, well, there's a big premium on networking, certainly, and also a big premium on attendees coming with session ideas that they want to run in advance. So some sessions are run by the Gen, and many sessions on top of that are then run by participants.
Yeah, it's also, sorry to interrupt you, Peter, but just saying there, it's not an on-conference. They call it Congress, don't they? This Global Entrepreneurship Network Congress. There's a little more to it, I think, isn't there?
Absolutely, yeah, it is indeed. So it's a congress really rather than a conference. So it is all about bringing the ecosystem together. And yeah, from our perspective, it's wonderful to be able to include some conversations about impact and sustainability within that, because it's part and parcel of the global enterprise industry now. I think we're actually going to show a couple of clips here, Chris, aren't we? Of a couple of moments throughout the week that we wanted to highlight that we think you'll find interesting as an audience.
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of the great things about Gen, was they recorded every session and they made them freely available online. So like most opportunities and events like that, you have to choose which one you want to go to, and maybe miss the others. In this case, it was choose which ones you see live, knowing you catch up later on the others too. So really wonderful resource that they provided there. And we'll link to that as well. I think I was checking there just before we jumped on, there's like 144 videos from Gen 2025. So a lot of sessions you can dive into. So yeah, we're going to record a few, we're going to share a few. There was one I wanted to point out, just in the world of ecosystems as we're talking about, and that was from Dan Eisenberg, who many will be familiar with. The name has written many a journal article, many an article on entrepreneurial ecosystem building. Actually coined the term entrepreneurial ecosystems. He would not be happy if I said coined the term entrepreneurial ecosystem building, and that's to the point that I wanted to share this small clip. So this clip comes from a session on how to measure ecosystem performance. It was led by the OECD. It was very much from a policy perspective, and Daniel was in the audience and was very, very quick to interrupt the session, I could say. I just remember him running from the back and the guys on stage being like, just take the mic. And he then shared his thoughts. So I'm just going to share that now, and then we can talk a little bit about that.
Because, and I recommend all you researchers, as a sanity check, just think about a swamp. I live near a swamp. Think about a swamp. And that's an ecosystem. Why? Because the various parts are feeding into each other and have created self-regulating with a certain amount of stability, okay? There's something equilibrium about it. You cannot have an ecosystem for the mosquito, for God's sakes. The mosquito is an element in the ecosystem. The bear is an element. You cannot do what you're doing without addressing the question of how this is supporting the needs and objectives of the actors in the ecosystem. You've taken one actor, the policymaker. This would look completely different if you were addressing the needs of the bankers and the needs of the media and the needs of the universities. It would look completely different. This is an anti-ecosystem approach to ecosystems. It's extracting the mosquito, the policymaker, out and saying, we're going to address, I'm not joking. I didn't get a chance to complain enough yesterday, so I'm doing it today. So you're abstracting. This is an anti-ecosystem approach to ecosystems. And so if you really want to do this, as an why is that important? Because it really is the ecosystem that supports something related to entrepreneurship. So I'll say just one word about that, what that something is. You said it. Thank you for qualifying your comment, Chris. I really think that's valuable and appreciative. Chris has extracted, now in terms of outcome, has extracted in Startup Genome, at least, and that you're honest about it, fine, and clear about it, as opposed to yesterday it wasn't quite so clear. And you're looking only at high-growth venture-backed companies. Oh, who is that valuable for? Well, you have to think about that. That is a smidgen of the growth entrepreneurship in the world. We know that, I've been a venture capitalist, we know that venture capitalists choose 1 out of 100 or 200, however you measure. And so it's a very rarefied group of entrepreneurs that get any kind of equity capital. So that's all I'll say, John. I wanted to make it interesting.
So I'm going to stop it there. That little clip, I think, just shows Daniel's character. Brilliant presenter, full of charisma, and isn't afraid to voice his opinions. So that was, again, I mentioned earlier, off the back of a very policy-focused, how do you measure ecosystem performance, talking about, the thing is that policy workers will actually want to know about, but his point there was that if you're just going to create a measurement framework that's suitable for the policy wonks, then you're not actually measuring all the different parts and elements of the ecosystem. And this idea of a swamp is something he's written about many times in previous articles. And he went on to another session on the main stage at that event that we were at in Indiana. And the quote that I just want to take from it, because it brings on from this swamp thing, he made a very good point. I think I remember him stomping his feet and raising a fist about the term ecosystem building, and how when he coined the term ecosystem, entrepreneurial ecosystems years ago, he never would personally use the term building. And the reason is, and this is a direct quote from him, you can cultivate it and you can catalyze it, you can encourage it and you can facilitate it. You can't build it, it's not a bridge. So this idea of you can't build an ecosystem, start an ecosystem from scratch. If you think of that swamp, it's about things catalyzing and combusting and doing and working together and filling gaps naturally. So I think that's an interesting point, because I previously would have referred to myself as an ecosystem builder. Whereas, definitely now I would reframe that, having seen how passionate he was and talked about that at that event. So yeah, that was just a key point from Global Entrepreneurship Network for me.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, absolutely. It's organic, isn't it? I mean, it's not something you can directly control, a bit like your fabulous golden retriever just entering.
Yes, did he make an appearance? Sorry.
Absolutely, yeah, no, and that's the beauty of as live recordings, you never know who's going to special guest during them. But I think absolutely spot on. And for me, the best ecosystems are the most diverse, the most organic ones, where you're able to have an intervention within them, but you're not trying to control them or build them, as you say.
Totally. And you do see that happening, where you'll see big institutions, possibly, that could be a university, it could be local government, trying to control an ecosystem, and that defeats the purpose of a naturally growing ecosystem. And it was interesting because also at Global Entrepreneurship Network Congress in Indiana, they had an art exhibition where they had all of these different models. It was very geeky for like up our street, but it was very geeky. Instead of like art, they were blown up models, like figures from academic journals on how entrepreneurial ecosystem building occurs. So despite this conversation happening on stage, that was being put up on walls and using the term ecosystem building. So I think it's something that the sector really hasn't grasped with, that maybe run with that terminology. But you've got someone like Daniel who's written about this, over and over again, who's actually coming out against it. So a very interesting point for me, I think, was when sitting through that and listening to that. But on that note, yourself, you actually were delivering a session. You were on a panel and a session, again, on the road of ecosystems and cultivating them. And I managed to get a clip of you at the session talking about that. So I'm just going to play that now, and maybe you could tell us a little bit more about that session and about the discussions that took place there.
Definitely. Thanks, Chris.
I used to run a network internationally called the Global Social Entrepreneurship Network, which of course rings a bell because it's only one more letter than Gen, yeah? And we had 60 partners in 70 countries around the world. But we didn't have the scale that Gen does. Why did we not have the scale that Gen does? Well, because it wasn't all about the money. It wasn't all about the commercial opportunity that entrepreneurs create. It was about the wider people and planet impact that we could deliver on. And I want to be bold because, of course, the strapline for this week is about being bold. I would love to see Gen launch a new campaign called Gen Sustain, where we can actively profile and role model those successful and those growing and nurtured social entrepreneurs all around the world, many of whom are already in here and waiting for that platform, and put funding behind it. We need to put money where our mouth is when it comes to social entrepreneurs, yeah? I want to be using that terminology more. I want us to be celebrating the impact because the people outside these four walls are crying out for it, yeah? Remember those 70%. 70% of young people are telling us, why aren't you already doing this and why aren't you doing more of it?
So tell us a little bit up here.
Yeah, I mean, really insightful. No, I mean, personally, I hate watching myself on video, but the key point there, I think, and it's not just a Gen or GEC conversation, it's a global ecosystem conversation, really, is that there just isn't enough resource and time and energy focused on what is really required to create that sustainable, and I mean sustainable with a small s and a big S, so sustainability from an impact point of view, but also actually ongoing sustainable ecosystem. We're not making the best of the platform. We're not joined up enough either. So it's one thing to do, something within the Gen network, and that's great. But what about other conferences, events, networks that we've been talking about, we'll keep talking about? How do we create that more joined up ecosystem? Because, as we've heard, it's organic, it's changing all the time. And those organisms, let's say, if we keep that theme running of the live ecosystem that are trying to navigate through it, what pathway do they choose? Is it a natural pathway or a natural bridge, or does it feel forced and fake? And at what point do interventions cause more damage than good? So for me, it's how do you create those organic interventions that enable entrepreneurs to navigate their way through the ecosystem successfully? That we don't have enough of that, I don't think.
Yeah. And fair play to you for like calling it out. Calling Gen out on a Gen stage. Like, yeah, that's brave. That was bold.
Thank you. It was bold. It was bold. It was in
You were just
keeping.
taking instruction from the tagline, like
I wasn't. And on that, I hope that when we do next year's in 2026, wherever that may be, and it's about to be announced now, actually, we'll follow through with that.
yeah. And based on what we're going to talk about in other events and the ones we already talked about, it is a recurrent theme. It is coming through a lot more in the ones that we've been to this year. I guess just a couple more things to say about GEC. I really enjoyed being part of the UK delegation. I think there's, it was usually when I go to things like GCEC, the Global Consortium Entrepreneurship Centers, it's a similar crowd that gets to go. It's a smaller group of people who can get to go to that. Whereas it was quite a large thing. It was 50 or something from a UK delegation went to this. And that was something I think it was unique about GEC, so many G's and C's, is that we definitely seen this idea of delegations. So there was a Kenyan delegation, there was an Australian delegation, a UK delegation, and I don't know, we'll try and find a photo of the big table. But that like felt like UN type stuff where they were at the big, table discussing real impactful things. There was ministers from countries there talking about what their policy and what they do for entrepreneurs in their country. So yeah, something on a whole other scale. I'd probably say it's the biggest sort of sector event I've ever been to. There's talking maybe 3,000-4,000 there. Usually I'm, topping at 1,000, the ones that I would go to. So really interesting, and definitely will be going back hopefully with an even bigger UK delegation in the next year or the year after.
Yeah, I think so. We're about to get the announcement, aren't we, Chris, of the location, and I think the timing as well, which may yet be either in the summer or the autumn.
Okay.
So when we know, we will share on our networks, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Yep. Super. Okay, on to the next one then. So this takes us to September. So we were back in the UK and we are at IEEC, the International Enterprise Educators Conference. And this year was in Manchester. It was in my home turf last year in QB, and we were really excited to have hosted the first ever ecosystem tour as part of that when IEC came to Belfast. And that's something we continued this year actually into Manchester. So we'll talk a little bit about the conference itself, but I guess our contribution to Startium this year, as we move more into that regional ecosystem piece, was on bringing the ecosystem tour to Manchester. So thank you to the team at Manchester Met for hosting that for coordinating that and bringing that all together. And we were much more hands off this year, but it was great to make sure that could happen and cover the cost of some buses and great food. By the way, that was great food. The Indian tapas, Bundaburst Brewery in Manchester. Yeah, top notch. So we visited Sister, which is Manchester's new innovation district. I've got a couple of notes here because I wasn't going to remember this all. The Yard, which is a really cool, actually unique environment. I lifted this quote from their website, which I thought was beautifully put together. So the Yard is a unique environment designed for the visionary minds of the city, a space where music and art thrive, and where creative industry startups and established pros can shake off the tired and let go of the expected. I really like that. So that was a cool venue, really cool venue. And then we went to Generator, which is enterprise hub throughout the city and has business support services and equipment, some really cool equipment they could use. And then we ended up back at from Indian Tapas at the brewery, which was lovely. So other than that, the only thing I'll say about it and hand over to yourself is I did notice this year there was absolutely a theme around sustainability at IEC, not just from the speakers that were selected, but even from their, we had to bring our own, we were told to bring our own lanyards this year, again, just to cut down on waste, because we all know, we probably both, Peter, from the conferences that we go to, we could make a quilt out of the number of lanyards we probably collected over the years. There you go, speaking of. And so that was interesting, and I thought that was something that was a very clear theme, which I don't know if I've seen at another IEC before, where there's been such a clear running theme throughout it, the whole thing. So I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Absolutely right. And I think it was very much a conscious choice, not just in the way the event was run, but the conversations that the event hosted, that we'd have a real theme around sustainability and equality, diversity, and inclusion. I think it being in Manchester as well, given that, the university's there, frankly, and it was obviously hosted really by the city, I would say, but obviously by the main universities at the heart of it, have a real commitment to social value and have done for hundreds of years. So it's a real deep-seated mission, I think, for them. I was on your tour. It was brilliant, I have to say, really enjoyable. I think it's always great to start an event with a tour of the place, so you get to know the location. I should say that the same was true with GCEC. We had some tours of Indianapolis, if you like. I think events that have that scene setting add a bit of that kind of cultural vibe that really sets the scene for the week itself. So really enjoyed that. And yeah, we were on a panel focused on sustainable enterprise. But actually, to be honest, we touched on a whole range of topics, from equality, diversity, inclusion, how we do this in the curriculum, as well as obviously extracurricular competitions and events and activities that we can do. And we had a pretty good turnout. I think goal really was to share with enterprise educators and practitioners, I suppose, inside and outside the curriculum, some practical tools, tips, both from within the network and I guess also from the wider world of practitioners outside of higher education. I think we're able to do that, and I'm confident that there'll be more in Nottingham next year, and which is my home city, by the way. So I'm super pleased to see it go back to Nottingham. But also, I think you will see more and more opportunities to train and support colleagues that are working in universities on these key topics. So I think watch this space for some really exciting content out of IEC next year.
Nice. That's exciting. Yeah, great event. Been going there for a few years. Well, say a few years. I remember when I first got my first job in a university. This was my first conference that I'd been to as an entrepreneurship manager, and that was in Leeds. Don't know when it was, maybe 2017, 2018. And it's always a good opportunity to get everybody together and to see friendly faces. And similar to Startup Hire, just be with people who are in a similar role maybe, but at a different university, learn from them. And yeah, so yeah, kudos to the team at IEC for putting together a great thing. I also agree with the tour. We get great feedback that it's a great opportunity to meet people, and when you're sitting beside them on a bus, it's hard not to speak to the person beside you. And that we have found a lot of the past 2 years, people who maybe come to the conference alone, they booked on the tour because that's been a wonderful opportunity to meet people, and they've then made those connections throughout the rest of the conference. So yeah, we hope to continue that going forward at IEC. So great. Okay.
We're on to, I think, the fourth conference of the year already.
We are
that we're profiling here, and this is actually again hot on the heels of Manchester. So we were out in Calgary in Canada for GCEC, another bunch of GCs and Es. the global consortium of entrepreneurship or enterprise centers. A genuinely global network, but I think a lot of the universities in their network are either based in North America or in kind of the UK, Europe, but they are growing that all the time. This is actually the first time I've been to this particular event. I know, Chris, you've been before. Really enjoyed it. So I've been to Calgary before for a different event a few years ago. So I had seen the place, but they showed us a different angle, certainly from a university perspective, and they've got a big footprint there at UOC, University of Calgary. And we're going to, speak a bit about some of our highlights from the event, and we have already, of course, recorded a little video series that we can signpost you onto separate from this. But for me, what made this event stand out is that although it's not strictly an unconference, the opportunities to network and to meet and greet and to coalesce around big ideas that we want to take forward after the event is really substantial. It's only 2 days, really, all in. But that first day in particular created an incredible amount of opportunities to do that, alongside the session content, which you can go to as you want. There's always going to be lots of that anyway. So they're really good at building that community, which I think is so valuable when you're traveling a long way for these events. Yeah. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think it was a lovely spot to be in. I'd never been to Canada. So not only was it my first time in Calgary, it was my first time in Canada. It was a bit of a journey to get there. I think what was supposed to be an 8-hour direct flight from Dublin turned out being a 23-hour journey through Minneapolis. But we made it, and it was well worth it. So it was, yeah, I enjoy GCEC. I've been to a few of them in the past, in Texas and Las Vegas. I skipped Babson, could have been to Babson a few times. But I really like it, as you say. It is probably heavily populated with North American universities and colleges, but that's actually one of the reasons I like to go because we get to learn exactly how what's happening that side of the pond, for want of a better phrase. And you get to see that. I guess what's interesting when we say North America, we don't just mean the US. We're talking Canada as well. And being hosted in Canada this year, some really good examples and talks and sessions hosted by Canadian universities. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. We do have another series, so I'll not spend too much time regurgitating that, so we can signpost out to those videos we recorded and to those very kind individuals that were open to us putting a microphone in their face and asking them questions during a busy lunch period. But yeah, I really enjoyed this, and the 3 things I'll just point out again, regurgitating from the previous talks, I think it's really important is obviously the talks around AI. That came up quite a bit. How do we teach with AI was obviously this being a primarily university-based conference, and the second was consolidation. So consolidation, collaboration, budgets are getting tighter. Universities are looking to see, well, where are they going to actually generate revenue from? As a result, we'd seen a couple of sessions and examples about universities collaborating, in some cases consolidating, and we're seeing that in Europe too. We have got customers in Belgium, for example. 6 universities come together to deliver an entrepreneurship service for their university, all under one umbrella, and we provide the digital infrastructure to allow them to do that. Then the third thing was the rise in entrepreneurship through acquisition. Fascinating topic. We see it all over social media, can be glamorized, but in this case, real serious conversations about how a graduate or an MBA can look to their local community, find a business that maybe has no succession plan, and instead of those 100 jobs being lost, finding someone who can come in with new life, take it over, and actually teaching someone how you do that. And that was a real standout theme coming through from my experience at GCEC 2025. Totally agree with you. Lots of opportunities to network, whether it was the Science Museum, where on a robotic arm throwing us up in the air, to lots of other trips. We got the opportunity to go up to Banff too, which was lovely to spend that with yourself and Marion. So yeah, great opportunity, and we'll point you out to that other series as well, where we went in a bit more depth on the GCEC.
Definitely.
They do they started more recently doing GCEC conference, which is the big annual conference. That's what we were at in Canada.
Yeah.
They started a couple of years ago doing halfway through the year as GCEC Summit. So it was in Beijing, or no, sorry, Bangkok, one of the B's.
In Thailand last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. So that was last year, I think it was, and this year coming up, it's in Sao Paulo in Brazil. So I'm hoping to get to that, which will be really interesting. And then there'll be the next one. I think it's Tallahassee, where the actual main conference is next year as well. So yeah, GCC was good this year.
I think it's
every
a
year,
highlight.
but great this year.
Absolutely. I think I agree with you. I couldn't agree more. And I think we're looking to be there next year for the same reasons. Where it's a great community. We speak the same language. We're solving problems. A lot of the work we do in Cambio obviously is about practical tools and solutions to these big social problems, equipping entrepreneurs and innovators. And I think that's exactly what GCC are looking to do. You come away with so many great contacts, networks, tools. That's, for me, what makes a great event. And I think all of these events have that in common, but I think GCC was a great way to sort of wrap up the year or come towards the end of 2025.
Yeah. I think the other thing there is that although a lot of these are university specific, I think all of them are actually university specific, apart from Jen. Yeah, but there was universities there. The reason like we still go to, I don't work for a university, I haven't for 6 years. We work with universities, but as we mentioned earlier, and like yourself, we were corporates and ecosystems.
Yeah.
The reason I still find these opportunities so valuable is because these are people who are employed full time to think about this, and they're in a sort of micro versions, more thinking about their ecosystem on a campus. And I get so much from the conversations that I'm part of and the directions that I see them thinking that I can then apply to on a regional basis, whether that's regional in terms of Northern Ireland, the smallest country within the UK, or it's on a bigger case like regions within Belgium and countries like that. So I think that's why I think, because when I said to some of our clients, another university conference, I'm like, yeah, but this is all transferable. And
Yeah.
it's particularly some universities like University of Waterloo, who have philosophy in there, one of the best accelerators in North America, if not, dare I say it, the globe. And that, while within a university, could be moved off the university campus and be just as successful with links to it. So yeah, I think there's lots to take away from that, not just from a university teaching perspective, but more so the ecosystem. I was about to say ecosystem building, Peter. I was about to say it.
Can't say that.
The ecosystem catalyzation.
Yeah, exactly. We have to change that wording, don't we? You're absolutely right, Chris. And if I look over the events we've talked about, all of them are pretty much open to whoever wants to join. You don't have to be a university to be there, especially Startup Hire and GCEC. Because ultimately, for me, universities offer, if not one of, possibly the most impactful ecosystem around. Because you've got access to expertise, you've got free resources, you've got funding, you've got international businesses, you've got entrepreneurs, you've got innovators, everything under the same virtual roof, really.
Yep.
It's the place to be if you want to start and scale a social business, certainly, but really any business.
Totally. Yep. And I've written a white paper a few years ago, which I need to change the name of, was How to Be an Ecosystem Builder. And it was primarily focused from my experience building an ecosystem within a university and working with those who have done that. And the 4 elements of it, of a university entrepreneurial ecosystem, which I talk about in the white paper, is stakeholders, resources, community, and culture. And how all of those shape what that ecosystem is, and how every university has different stakeholders, resources, communities, and cultures, and that all has to play into it to be cultivated rather than starting from scratch and seeing what you can build.
Yeah.
So yeah, all in all, 2025 was a good year for the conference circuit.
Great year, Chris. Absolutely. I mean, we picked out these events not just because we've both pretty much been at all of these together, but actually also because they are highlights. There's a lot of events in the global calendar these days still, and it requires quite a lot of money, but also time, and time is money, of course, to attend these. But I think there's real value in terms of getting work done, meeting interesting people, sparking ideas, new partnerships. It's really valuable investment, I think. And if only a handful of people off the back of these videos decide, actually, we're going to go to these events next year, we're going to make those conversations, generate those partnerships, I think that'll be a win for us, because it's not just what we heard, it's what we did as a result of these events that really made a difference. So it was a great year, and it sparked some brilliant collaborations.
Totally, completely agree. And it's often the conversations that happen in and around the sessions where you get real value. And I got a few experiences of that myself this year. Corridor chats on the way to get a coffee, And what I maybe would say actually is probably something we can offer is, if anybody is actually thinking about going to these conferences next year, one of us will likely be there. We're in the WhatsApp groups that usually there's a UK delegation WhatsApp group, If you're going to any of the international ones, let us know. We'll get you added. And the value comes when you're doing it with others, I think, going to these conferences.
Sure.
And having that base of like a, friendly faces while you go out and explore and can go back as well. So totally. So in terms of trying to wrap it up, Peter, and looking a little bit back in some of those things and ahead to 2026, from all of the different conversations, session topics, sessions that you were involved in, events that we might have been part of, are there any big themes then that we're thinking that are coming out of the back of that, or anything that's leaving you pondering a bit more as the world will go next year?
Yeah, that's a great question, Chris. I mean, first of all, good news for us because this is our bread and butter. Lots of talk about sustainable and impactful entrepreneurship. And despite some of the big political, geopolitical, I guess, and economic headwinds against us, I think those concepts are here to stay. I prefer personally to look at this ecosystem as one that includes those, and that actually most, certainly young entrepreneurs, are looking to be and think sustainable anyway. So that's definitely a theme. Freelancing was a big theme, actually, and not kind of trying to put too many labels around, are you an entrepreneur or not, or what stage in the business are you at? This kind of freelancing mixed portfolio world, I think, ought to be part of the entrepreneurship conversation. As you said, entrepreneurship through acquisition. And the last thing I would say is entrepreneurship rather than enterprise, in that obviously enterprise matters and launching businesses is important, but placing the focus on the individual entrepreneur to lead and to develop maybe multiple businesses and to learn from that experience, that for me is how you get the game changers. That's where we change the world. That's where we address some of these big sticky problems, is by equipping the entrepreneurs of tomorrow, not just the enterprises of today.
Really like that, actually. I've never thought of that your different point of view is like the enterprise is talking about the collective thing, the enterprise, and the entrepreneurship is about the journey of an individual. That's really interesting.
It's taken me all year. It's taken me all year to come up with it, Chris.
Very good. Well, I'm glad we got it on camera. Yeah, very similar to you. I've a couple of highlights there. The sustainability thing definitely came up a lot more. Interestingly, actually, on that topic, hearing some universities say that they may not actually be at a conference next year because their university sustainability policy is banning flights. So that's not something that they're able to do. So be interesting to see how that goes. Some of my thoughts that have been, I guess, formulated over those different events that we've been at is with the conversations around AI, with knowledge being readily available. It's it's a conversation happening in a lot of universities right now. Is with that knowledge being readily available, what is what should be the focus of the entrepreneurship supporter, the business support organization, the economic development organization? What should their focus be if it's not a knowledge provider, if it's not a resource provider? And we hosted a lot of our university, UK university customers. We do it once a year. We get everybody together, and this year we were in Edinburgh at the Right Red Triangle, within Edinburgh University. And one thing that came out of that is this focus on space and community. So a bit like we were saying at the beginning, this focus on having a space to collaborate. But that's why we have moved into a physical office this year. And, that seemed to be a big focus for, if it's not knowledge, if it's not one-to-one advice, if it's not, workshops, because they can get them wherever they want on any YouTube channel, they want them, what is it? And that role of being a resource provider at space or community definitely is something that I think a lot more will be moving into 2026. Also funding reprioritization. So when we were in GCEC in Calgary, we heard about revenue generation. So university entrepreneurship centers thinking about how to actually generate revenue to be sustainable in terms of their sustaining their model. Funding reprioritization. So we're hearing universities putting a lot more focus onto commercialization. Some coming out with strategic pillars, of which none of them include the word teaching, but actually are much more focused on commercialization and research. So I think that'll be interesting. How does that impact the University Entrepreneurship Center? How does it impact the regional ecosystem if that's such a big, let's try that again. A much bigger focus for the university. How does that impact beyond campus? And I guess the final thing that we're looking into 2026 is how do these services, whether that's in a university, whether you're in a private accelerator, whether you're a service from the local government, how do they differentiate themselves?
Yeah.
If there's knowledge accessible at the tip of the finger and in your pocket, how do they actually support thriving or aspiring entrepreneurs in a better way that's not just the same stuff regurgitated?
Yeah.
And I have some thoughts about that were cultivated over these few things, and I'll maybe throw one of them out there just as something we'll maybe pick up in the new year or our 2026 review, is that I think these accelerators will be focusing a lot more on accelerator IP. So
Yep.
what is their intellectual property? What are the assets that they bring to the table? Is that they bring an audience to the table? Is it they bring a network to the table? Is it that they have a set of prompts that they have used and used successfully by other founders to help accelerate a process that might have taken previously a number of weeks? Is that where we see, how do they become a resource provider, but in a different way? And I think that will be really interesting to see from universities and from private accelerators or governments as to how they reframe that role as a resource provider going into 2026 and beyond.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I completely agree. And I think if we take that focus on the university entrepreneurship space first, I think it is that unique selling point. What are you offering that's different to another university? And frankly, also different to other support entities outside of higher education, because of course universities interact across the whole economy. So I think that is a critical piece for our clients, our partners, our friends in the sector. Equal to that, though, I think, how do we create a map of an ecosystem that speaks to what's going on within HE and E, if you like, or HE and SE in my case with the social impact piece, but also an ecosystem that is beyond those four walls, so that the entrepreneurs and others that are trying to navigate, as we mentioned earlier, are able to more easily do so, because it can be really confusing. And funny enough, actually, the more support available, the more confusing that can be. Where do I start? Where do I go next? So how do we create that map, that direction of travel that enables entrepreneurs and others to really walk this path? Not everyone will have the opportunity to attend the events we've been to. So how do we create something that falls off the back of those engagements going into next year?
Totally. I'm going to take the bait because you laid it out there. And as a business owner, it would be remiss of me not to mention it. But the like that idea of mapping the ecosystem, that is something we're doing a lot more at Startium and seeing a lot more interest in. We've just launched a big project here in Northern Ireland with Enterprise Northern Ireland, where there's now a mobile app where the whole ecosystem is in their pocket. And I, as a business owner, will get notifications now if a grant opens that's relevant for me, or if an event that's relevant to what I'm working on. And that's definitely where we're moving towards in a regional perspective, but also in a university perspective too. So thanks for laying that bit out there. I took it hook and sinker.
No problem. That's absolutely fine. So what next? I mean, obviously we've said a bit about what we've done this year and perhaps some of the highlights for next year, Chris. But what's our call to action? What do we want people to go out and do other than join more events and spend some time with us? What else?
Yeah, well, I think that, number one, let's try and get more people from our own regional networks to come along to these events. I think they're a great opportunity. It's the network effects, right? The more people that go, the better it is for those who go. And that's important. So call to action is reach out to us if you're thinking about going to any of them. And well, if one of us are going, we'll connect you with the other who's going, and it would be great to see you there. Secondly, I think if there's any conversations like this that you've enjoyed or anything you'd like us to pick up on, we enjoy having these conversations. I can speak for myself. I enjoy having these conversations. And so if there's anything that we should be focusing on, or an event maybe that you can't get to, or loads of people can't get to, maybe we can, and then send a reporter into the field maybe and then report back. That could be an option. And I know you've got a newsletter, Peter. That's maybe something that
We have, Chris. Yeah, we've got a newsletter that's sort of evolving all the time. We call it the Social Exchange these days, and we're going to be showcasing more of our practical tools, case studies, events, but also coaching approaches that we actually use in the business, not just what we've been doing in the future. So going into 2026, you're going to get some practical tips and advice. So do sign up to that, and also make sure you're signing up to the Startium mailing list, because I know you guys have got a lot of useful resources to share with the networks.
Thanks. Yeah, we'll put a link to those in the descriptions of this, wherever you're watching this video. We don't have a newsletter, but when we find good resources and things we want to share, we send that out to your mailing list just to keep everybody up to date. So super. Well, look, Peter, it's been a great year to share those experiences with you and the team, and looking forward to doing a few more in 2026. And depending on how the feedback goes for this video, maybe people have enough of us already after 2 videos.
Yeah, the
we'll be doing
B-roll
all of
takes alone. Yeah, absolutely, Chris. The B-roll takes alone. Who knows where that will go? I've really enjoyed having these conversations with you this year, and most of all, joining those events with you and a few others that have been at a few of these across the year. And here's to 2026. And it wouldn't be a end of the year video without me pulling out a little prop that I've got right next to me here. That traditional, let me buy some time,
Go for
Santa
it.
hat that I can put on here
Love it.
for end of year celebration. So whether you celebrate Christmas or not, it is nice to have a little break. And just to show we don't take ourselves, I speak for myself here, too seriously. A very Merry Christmas for you going into 2026. Don't work too hard. Enjoy a little break because we all deserve it. And here's to even more powerful and impactful ecosystems next year, Chris.
Super. I'll see you then.
See you then. Take care.